The purpose of the Guru and the need for the Guru is to help show us in the flawless mirror of their consciousness our own highest consciousness. Good morning, everyone. Well, this is a big topic. It's one of my personal favorite topics on the one hand, but on the other hand, we live in a pretty skeptical society. So trying to explain it or speak to it for those who aren't familiar with it is a big challenge, okay? So I selected this excerpt from the poem Samadhi, and I think the key in it that I wanted to touch on, of course, is the celestial Guru-given meditation. Meditation without devotion, without gratitude or connection with the Guru is simply a technique. It's sort of two-dimensional. And without devotion, it can make us sort of rigid and hard. I've seen people like that who meditated a lot, but without any sense of gratitude or devotion. And it wasn't helpful to them. They only became more willful. And so, Guru-given meditation, it's a precious gift. And when I was meditating on it, I was reflecting. I vividly remember as a young child, maybe 7 years old or so, in Suriname, where I grew up, Dutch Guiana, South America, till I was 10. And the Dutch, at least so far as I was aware by my experience, they practice St. Nicholas Day for Christmas. So on December 5th, it's practiced. We called it Sinterklaas. And on December 25th, Christ's birthday, mind you, I was from a non-religious Jewish family, but nevertheless, every Jew I've ever known also practices Christmas or celebrates it. But on December 25th, it was strictly a religious holiday. So I had no relationship to that. What I had a relationship to was St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, on December 5th. And what we would do when we'd go to bed is we'd put out our shoes next to the bed, and then in the morning, voila, I still get tingles down my spine. There'd be a gift. And that particular year, there was a tiny little box in my shoes, and I opened it, and there was a beautiful little golden ring in it. And it was so precious. I remember thinking, thank you, Sinterklaas. You know, how did you know this would be so special to me? And I was so grateful for that little gift. And so it is that feeling in the heart, that connection, that sense of gratitude, that sense of openness, that sense of loving is so important. In Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, he says, I cognize the center of the Imperium as that point of intuitive perception in my heart. Not how much I can meditate, how strong I can meditate, how I can follow the the rules of the spiritual life, that point of intuitive perception in my heart. And as I said, we live in a very skeptical society, so we actually have to consciously practice opening our hearts, practice loving, practice kindness, practice gratitude and appreciation. I was thinking about this topic, the Guru, and there's two illustrations that come to my mind. Actually, before that, I did want to say, I wanted to point out the beautiful niches in this sanctuary. And each one of them represents a different spiritual tradition. And this one over here represents our tradition, self-realization. Swami Kriyananda, Nanda's founder, told us that when he lived with Yogananda and one of the monks was going to travel overseas, he needed to get a passport. And on the application it asks, what is your religion? Or it used to, I don't know if it still does. And Yogananda told this monk to write self-realizationist. You're a self-realizationist. I love that. And so all of these traditions have at the center of them one person, male or female, who had a revelation, who experienced God fully, cosmic consciousness, and then around them formed what we call a religion, by you and by me, by disciples of these great ones, recognizing their magnetism and tuning into them. For me, it was easy. I had the great blessing of meeting and spending a lot of time, you know, more than 4 decades with Swami Kriyananda, a direct disciple of Yogananda. And I remember thinking in the beginning, because he clearly, from my perspective, had a lot more spiritual consciousness developed than I did. And I remember thinking, well, if he needs a guru, I certainly need a guru, you know. And so I took it on faith, and then I started to take the steps in that direction. But the point I wanted to make about these niches is there's many pathways. There isn't just one pathway. But once you feel a resonance with a pathway, then you want to follow it up the mountain. Because if you keep going sideways to other pathways, you never make it to the top of the mountain. So you do need to select a pathway, but there are many. In the Festival of Light that we offer here each week, we say many times that light has descended, drawn to earth by the call of aspiring love. Your chosen people have always been those of every race and nation who with deep love chose thee. Every word in that has a very powerful meaning if you meditate on it. But many times that light has descended. And that's really important for us to remember. It's universal. And that light shines within each and every one of us. The highest expression of our soul nature, each of us, is the Guru. We are ultimately the Guru. But until we have freed ourselves from millions of lifetimes of karma, it's all covered over. and it's difficult to see. So we're just trying to peel the onion, you know, layer by layer. So now I'll get to the two examples I wanted to offer. One is a story that Yogananda used to tell that I think has a very important point on this subject. Many of you might be familiar with it, but it's about the lioness who's full with child, and she's hungry, but she's moving so slowly that she can not catch the things that she needs to eat. And so at this point, she's at the edge of a meadow and she sees a herd of sheep, and she thinks, aha. And so she crawls up as close as she can, waddles, and then she jumps into the middle of the sheep, hoping to catch one. And she doesn't, they disperse, they're all over. She goes trying to chase them, but she's just too slow. And then she waddles off. Well, what she didn't know is that when she had made that leap, the intensity of that physical leap, her baby was born. The baby lion was there in the middle of the sheep. The lioness was long gone, and this mother sheep took pity on this little newborn and took it under her wing and started to raise this little lion sheep. And so after a couple of years, I looked it up. Lions, male lions live 8 to 10 years. So I'm going to say the lion sheep was a teenager. And this king lion saw the herd and wanted a sheep for dinner. And so he started to chase the sheep, and they all dispersed and started to run away. And there was this, suddenly to the amazement of this king lion, there was this teenage lion running away from him and making all the sounds of a sheep. And so he catches up with him and he pounces on top of him, and the little sheep goes, "Don't kill me, don't kill me," the lion sheep. And the lion says, "What are you talking about? Why are you running away from me?" And he picks him up and he takes him to a nearby pond. He said, "You're not a sheep." And he looks with him over the mirror of the calm water of the pond, and the little sheep, lion sheep, has his eyes all closed. He said, "Open your eyes." And he opens his eyes, and he sees that he looks like this lion and not like all the sheep that he has known. And so the point of that story is the purpose of the guru and the need for the guru is to help show us in the flawless mirror of their consciousness our own highest consciousness. Period. End of story. That is their purpose, and that is their only desire, is to help us to see our own reflection of the guru within us, of the highest within us. There's a second story. I'm going to try to make it brief, but I have to tell it. He's not here today, but our friend at the farm, Parto, just took on the name, was blessed with the name Narada. And there are many stories in India about Narada, but the one famous one that comes to mind is Narada and God, or God as the guru, are walking along in the desert. And at a certain point, God as the guru asks Narada to get him a glass of water. He's really thirsty. Narada sees a nearby village, goes to it, knocks on the door of the first little hut, and a man opens, an older man. He asks him for a glass of water for his guru, and behind the old man is a beautiful young woman, and she gets him a glass of water, and guess what? They fall in love. They get married. They have children. He builds his family their own little hut. They're living happily. And then one day there's a great flood of the nearby little trickle of a river. And it breaks through the banks and it washes through the village. And everyone's in a panic. And he grabs his wife and his young child, and he puts the infant on his shoulders and goes out to try to get through the current of the water. And at a certain point, his wife loses her footing and she falls and she drowns, and he is just devastated. And while he's lamenting that, his other hand, he loses his young child. And he is in such despair, he just sort of falls backward. The little baby also drowns. And that's the last thing he remembers. And then he suddenly hears his guru's voice saying, "Narada, Narada, I sent you 20 minutes ago to get me a glass of water. What are you doing lying face down in the sand?" And Narada looked up and around him, and he realized what had happened. And that's what happens to all of us. We go out from our home in divinity, in God, with the intention of being helpful, and karma sets in. And waves of life sort of roll over us. And we forget what our purpose was, why we're here, what we're doing. And then when we're just feeling totally lost and in despair, God's calling to us all the time. And so we wake up and realize why we're here and what we need. Help. We need help. And their purpose is to reflect back to us like that flawless mirror. And their purpose is to help us, to assist us, to give us guru-given meditation, to give us a way of life that can free us from our karma. I wanted to close, if I could, with another brief excerpt, just a little portion of Yogananda's poem, God's Boatman. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death, and return to earth's shores from my home in heaven. I want to load my boat with those waiting thirsty ones who are left behind, and carry them by the opal pool of iridescent joy, where my Father distributes his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, I will come again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be, 1,000,000,000,000 times. Om Guru.